For the second time since Thanksgiving, the Martinez refining company ejected a toxic dust.
This time called coke dust from a different unit of the refinery onto nearby neighborhoods. KTVU's Tom Baker joins us now with more details from this morning's release and the possible consequences. Tom.
Well, it was thankfully not a long release, but any release is of concern for communities that are sitting near refineries that they feel are sometimes a key source of health concerns and pollution when these things do occur. The dark sooty dust fell in some neighborhoods where it settled on homes, lawns, gardens, and people, with touching or breathing it in possibly but unlikely of concern for the very young, the frail elderly, and sensitive individuals depending on the amount, which probably was not much.
1 minute duration of coke dust. Our hazardous materials incident response team has responded to the community to observe where this dust has fallen. We are also working in the community to obtain samples of the material that is released so that we can send it off for a laboratory analysis.
Coke dust is a type of ash from refining containing mostly carbon and hydrogen, but is often laced with traces of so-called heavy metals that are toxic and can irritate or damage the lungs, heart, or other organs. But it's the dose that makes the poison.
If they just rinse off the material, then as we mentioned, we expect it's mostly carbon and hydrogen and don't expect to be health impacts, and we're just being cautious at this time in terms of as we investigate more.
But further advice may be given once lab tests of that dust is processed and identified by week's end.
Right now, we do not believe that there are any health impacts that would be experienced by the community. However, we are asking people to avoid close contact with it.
Within 72 hours, the refinery will be required to present a report to the county outlining details of the release, especially the volume released, and lab tests should be done before the week's end. But this is nothing like last Thanksgiving's release from a different unit of this refinery. That was a release that spewed out some 24 tons over many, many hours, containing lots of toxics, including aluminum, barium, chromium, nickel, vanadium, zinc, and others. Heavy metal toxicity in large amounts can lower human energy levels, damage brain function, lungs, kidney, liver, and blood. That's why back then officials put out an advisory to avoid eating backyard produce. And the good news, of course, that is not the case with today's event, so that is something at least we can be thankful for. Back to you.
As you said, this is the second time in 8 months we're seeing an event like this. Moving forward, how does the refinery limit the frequency of these releases?
Well, these releases aren't supposed to happen at all, but we know that these are complex facilities and they can have upsets from time to time. They even flare once in a while in order to prevent explosions, all of that. But remember, when these refineries were built, they were out in the woods somewhere, essentially. Now there are whole communities around. They just have to get better and better, and I think you can say that they have. But these kinds of upsets really undermine their own credibility, and since they want to stay here and they make a lot of money here, it's to their best interest to not have this happen at all. Hopefully this is the right direction, because Thanksgiving was bad. This one wasn't so bad. Let's hope we don't see another.
Yeah, more work to be done. Tom Baker, live in the newsroom for us. Tom, thank you.
Yeah.